Hello, everybody. As Jessica mentioned, my name is Jay Birchfield. The Director of Commercial Sales here at Alertus Technologies. Appreciate you guys taking the time here this morning, and good afternoon and good evening for our friends on the international front who I know are joining us as well. As Jessica alluded to, we're going to be talking about specifically, chemical and food manufacturing sites. What we're seeing, how we've worked with some customers here in the past and recently and ongoing as we're looking towards their future endeavors, their future goals, and then just some best practices that we're seeing when it comes to notifying your people, keeping your people safe, but also keeping business continuity moving along, making sure that your processes are efficient, making sure we can save you time, making sure that you have your emergency preparedness up to par when it comes to just being prepared for any and all situations that may occur that could affect the safety of your people and the security of your facilities in general. So, with that being said, I'll start and kind of go through exactly what we're going to be talking about today. As I mentioned, we'll be talking about specifically chemical and food manufacturing. There's some unique challenges we know that you guys deal with on a day in, day out basis. We'll also get into what we've seen from a risk assessment analysis, as well as how organizations are planning and just really staying ahead of the curve when it comes to communications, when it comes to looking at their unique challenges. Because what we found is every organization, doesn't matter if you do the exact same thing, every organization has its own set of unique challenges based on the geography, based on the layout of the plants, based on the hierarchy of the organization itself. And so we'll talk through a little bit about that. Also share with you how we've helped specific organizations, with their emergency notification process, procedures, and tools. And then we'll also get into where we see manufacturing going when it comes to emergency communications, really those critical communications across the enterprise. So that being said, look forward to going through this with everyone. As Jessica alluded to, if you have any questions, feel free to insert them in the chat and we will go through them at the end, or we can follow up with you as well. So thank you again. As I mentioned, each organization, we work with chemical and food manufacturing sites across, basically globally. And each site is very unique in terms of size, in terms of scope, in terms of what they do, how many people they have on the floor, especially what we've seen during COVID times, where a lot of organizations are working from home. Manufacturing can't work from home. You guys have to be on site in the facilities, have to be making sure the products are getting produced and ultimately being delivered. So going to be talking through a little bit about that, the specific scenarios that we go through. A little bit of kind of high level stats here. What we see is basically the growth rate, and this is coming from third parties here, is between 2021 and 2026, there should be a 15% growth rate among the manufacturing industry. And as organizations continue to grow, it's essential what we found that they continue to invest in their communication assets and making sure that things are simpler, make sure that things are easy to use, and make sure that the automation is there so that if you have a dentist appointment at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and an emergency situation happens, you don't have to be the one sitting there sending out the alert. Really setting up these systems so that they can mimic the hierarchy, have all sorts of redundancy in place, and hopefully automate a lot of the processes. So, thinking about this, as I mentioned, 50% of all events that happen that really affect life safety and affect operations as a whole are caused by some sort of communication issue. Either leaders weren't informed in time, or they were informed after the fact, so they couldn't make that quick second decision, or the communication process broke down when leaders found out about what was going on, tried to alert their people, but for whatever reason, loud environment, not having the actual hardware and software notification tools at their disposal, people were not notified in time. And so, of course, you have to deal with the repercussions of that. So that's really what we are focused on as an organization and what we've seen in terms of just best practices across the industry. is looking at how we can speed up how that information flow occurs, whether it be the initial piece of letting you know what's going on or the after effects of directing your employees, directing your visitors, directing everyone that needs to know not only what's going on, but what to do next. So we'll talk a little about that as well. Uh, I think when we're thinking about chemical and food manufacturing plants, as I mentioned, each plant, doesn't matter if it's the same organization, each individual plant has its own challenges, has its own specific scenario that we need to take into account when we're putting together the emergency plan specifically. And I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading through these bullet points, but the basic key here, and this is something that most organizations that we work with already have at least the framework of these in place. And many organizations have them completely done, from step 1 to step 28, exactly what happens. But just some things to keep in mind as you're kind of writing communicating out your emergency plans, as you're creating your emergency plans. What does it look like? The evacuation protocols are going to be different based on the specific facility itself. You're going to have different control mechanisms when it comes to contamination, when it comes to access control systems, when it comes to the overall physical security and safety of your people, but also just thinking about the actual tools that you're using as a whole. So that being said, these are just some examples of some types of emergency plans. And when I was talking with Jessica about this webinar, I spoke with a lot of our customers that currently use Alertus as their preeminent platform to send out notifications and really consolidate their systems. And she showed me this picture, and it made me laugh because I can't tell you how many high-level leaders that I've sat across the table from and had conversations at their offices, of course, pre-COVID, before we were just all internet-based here. But we'd have these conversations and we talk through, what does your emergency plans look like today? And so many of those leaders who work for, I'm not going to just give them by name, but so many of those leaders are coming from billion-dollar companies. And those billion-dollar company leaders would literally break out these 3-ring binders that look very similar to what you're seeing on my screen here. They looked like they were about 3,000 pages of plans. Every plan you can possibly think of under the sun, step 1 to step 25 to step 300. Everything was all included in those pages. The issue is that when they're in a 3-ring binder, when an emergency happens, you got to be able to react, and you got to have that situational awareness. And having them in the 3-ring binders is, they would tell me this just face to face. They were old school, and they really wanted to get into looking at the future of how they can leverage their tools, how can they leverage their plans to facilitate and expedite their emergency communications plan across the board. So that's what we've helped them do by leveraging the software and hardware components, as well as just integrating their systems as a whole. So taking that into account, traditionally manufacturing plants, rely on just traditional tools, audible visual tools, speaker, sirens, strobes, PA systems, everything you can think of, signaling devices, auto dialing systems, mass notification platforms that rely on text and email. And that's something that we really do a great job of, is integrating with all of those systems, giving you a one-stop shop of being able to notify all of your people without having to have that swivel chair effect, activating this system, activating that system, activating your text and email platform, really consolidating that all into one simple point of activation. And I think that's critical when you're talking about expediting the process of letting your people know what's going on, but also letting them know what to do next. It's great for them to know what's going on, but if they don't have that direction as to what they need to be doing, a lot of times there's some chaos that's created from that notification. And that's something we want to eliminate. We want to make sure that your response plans are integrated into the system and that we have that ready to go so that you have these preset messages defined. Everything is at your tip of your fingers. It's either automated or it's a one-touch activation piece to be able to facilitate all of your notification assets, all of your communication assets, indoor, outdoor, and your personal notifications as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as I get more into the presentation. So now, looking at how we can help. So how we've helped organizations, specifically chemical and food manufacturing, number one, thinking about this, and this is kind of a visual for you to take in, but it's all about consolidating systems. It's all about filling in gaps, and it's all about saving you time. Three things, most critical issues we deal with. Now, there are some underlying components to that, as I mentioned, with loud environments within manufacturing facilities, dead zones when it comes to cell phones. Many organizations that we work with don't allow cell phones on the floor. So being able to leverage all the tools you have. So that being said, we kind of have a three-step process here at Alertus that we go through with each individual client that we bring on. And so it's really a consultative process where we understand, what are your emergency plans today? What does it look like? What sort of communication assets do you have at your disposal? Are you using VoIP phones? Do you have PA systems? My guess is everyone has fire alarm systems. Do you have strobes? Do you have sirens? Do you have visual alerting? Like, what do you have today? Do you have digital monitors set up throughout your facility that we can leverage and integrate with? And so that's really the key thing that we want to do more so than anything else, is look at all the different communication assets you have at your disposal today and give you the ability to unify them through our software. I think one thing we don't do a very good job of in terms of demonstrating, or I guess expressing our value as an organization, is this is it. This is the first thing we want to do, is provide you a cost-effective means to be able to consolidate all of your systems you have in place, unify them. So if something does occur, you press one button, it goes out to all those different notification devices. That's the first thing we want to do. Make sure that your entire facility, in and around your facility, all your people, all your visitors, all your employees, everyone is notified. You have 100% saturation across the facility and across the enterprise, really, giving leaders like yourself the ability to know what's happening, whether it be at your headquarter location, whether it be at one of your warehouses somewhere, whether it be at your manufacturing facility, that might be internationally based. Making sure that real-time situational awareness is there. And that's the first piece, is really not necessarily having to implement anything new, just consolidating the systems you have in place today. So that's really, when we take a look at that, a lot of questions that we typically ask is, first things first, what do you have in place today? What are you looking to accomplish here? So as I mentioned, here are a few of the types of systems that most organizations currently have in place that we can integrate with, we can unify, we can make sure that when you send out an alert, it goes out to all of these devices. And some of these devices are input devices. And I'll talk through a little bit about that here momentarily when I talk about the automation piece. But one thing that I love about working for Alertus is that we don't really compete with anyone. Even the quasi-competitors that are out there when it comes to the hardware components, speakers, sirens, strobes, we are vendor agnostic because we want to look out for the best interests of our customers. And if our customers already have these systems in place, we by no means want to rip and replace those systems. We want to allow you to leverage those tools, really maximize the ROI on what you've already invested in those communication assets. So thinking about all these different tools that you have in place within your facility today, what we can do is think about this, look at how we can, the second piece here, fill in the existing gaps that might exist. So once we've unified the tools that you have in your facilities today, then we'll go through from a consultative methodology and think about, are there any existing gaps that currently exist? And it might be gaps that you've already identified. It might be gaps that we, jointly decide exist while we are doing, on-site walkthroughs, which is typically the case with larger type deployments. We'll go through, we'll identify where there may be gaps in coverage, where you may need specific in-building notification, outdoor notification, and then the personal notification as well with the desktop and with the radios and a few other things. So just giving you a kind of a mass overview of the types of systems that I'm mentioning when I talk about indoor, outdoor, and personal alerting. The indoor components here, as you can see, all of these things are either hardware that we provide or systems that you currently have in place. Like, as I mentioned, the VoIP phones. If you have Cisco and Avaya phones, you can automatically integrate that into the platform. If you have visual signaling strobes. If you have PA systems, we can leverage our text-to-speech interface with those existing systems. Your fire alarm interface, so leveraging the communication assets you have with your fire alarm piece. Someone pulls a fire alarm, you can automatically have that go across your desktop notifications, or automatically activate your speakers, your sirens, your strobes, all of those things, depending upon exactly what your goals are and how you want this to be accomplished. Ultimately, it's up to you. We can provide our own best practices. We can provide you with scenarios that we've done in the past with similar organizations. But that's the key thing, is looking at the indoor component piece, the outdoor, and the personal. So with the indoor piece, again, it's all about audio, visual, just real-time alerts, leveraging those assets you have in place today, and then adding on the different pieces where gaps may exist. And then we're looking at the outdoor alerting piece. So we have what we call our HPSA, which is an acronym for our high power speaker arrays. And these things are incredible. They literally, if you are a mile away from these things, you can hear them. You can hear intelligible voice. It comes across very clear. You can also leverage them for tones. We also provide indoor and outdoor horns that you can leverage. Specific tones mean specific things for some organizations, and you can set that up accordingly in relation to your emergency plans. Omnidirectional speakers, great for indoor environments, warehouses, and manufacturing facilities, because with traditional indoor horns and indoor speakers, it's really just one way, or maybe 180 degrees that you're getting when it comes to the actual alerts. With the omnidirectional speaker, what we found is you can put these things in the middle of your facilities, and everyone 360 degrees can hear exactly what's going on, intelligible spoken voice, very clear. And then we have our mobile HPSA as well, which is actually a new tool that we've rolled out, which is basically our mobile HPSA that's on a trailer. So, thinking about this, I don't know what the application would be for a manufacturing facility, but thinking about going from site to site, being able to leverage this for specific events is the most, I'd say, the most used application when it comes to the mobile HPSA. And then getting into the actual personal alerting components. So most manufacturing companies we work with are leveraging the two-way radios. And the beauty of our system is you can, again, leverage those tools to both activate notifications as well as receive notifications and have that two-way capability in real time. We also have the recipient app. Desktop notification is probably one of our most used tools, just because it is so seamless, so easy to use. It also gives you the ability to have additional forms of activation, which I'll talk about here momentarily. So thinking about that, we've had the first step, the second step, really integrating your systems you have in place today, filling in any communication gaps that might exist. And then the third piece is really tying it all together. So thinking about how we can automate the process, leveraging those tools so that when something happens, you don't have to be the one that's sitting there on your swivel chair, activating this system, activating that system, activating your PA system, sending out a text alert. What we can do through our out-of-box integrations, and we have hundreds of integrations, like I mentioned before. That's one of the beauties of working with Alertus is, being really agnostic when it comes to other organizations out there, because we don't really necessarily think there are any competitors that do exactly what we do. And we're really focused on how can we bring value to our customers in the most cost-effective way. So thinking about that, if you have camera systems, motion detectors, if you have third-party applications, if you have an Everbridge, if you have an OnSolve, if you have a Mir3, if you have Regroup as your text and email platform, and that's how you're sending out notifications, that's how you're activating your systems, there's no need to change your processes whatsoever. We can simply just integrate our platform, plug and play, and now you have the ability to not only hit people's mobile devices, but also hit your indoor communication assets, your outdoor communication assets, and then the desktop and the additional personal notification assets as well. So that's really kind of the key factor is the 1, 2, 3. So a lot of organizations we work with, they say, hey, let's do this in a phased approach, or really all we need is to really unify the systems we have in place. We've made a significant investment in those systems, and we really just need to expedite how we're leveraging those platforms today. which is great. We are happy to do that. But when we really look at kind of the future of where this is going, which I'll talk about here momentarily, the key is having kind of that Internet of Things type methodology where we're leveraging additional assets, we're leveraging third-party systems, and we're allowing these systems to automatically activate and make sure your people know what's going on and what to do in real time. So thinking about the state of manufacturing technology and specifically what we're looking at when it comes to the Internet of Things and sensors and how we are using technology to activate other platforms and kind of that push-pull methodology there. So, this could be, you can read through this, but basically 60% of manufacturing companies are already using some sort of IoT projects, looking at sensors. So there are all sorts of sensors that are out there, whether they be in the food manufacturing space. You want to have temperature sensors associated with your refrigerators, make sure that the food doesn't spoil. You might have pressure sensors. You might have sensors related to specific chemical spills. You might have sensors on your access control system, which I'm sure you do. We work with a lot of organizations that already have that in place. But that's really kind of where we're seeing the manufacturing market head toward, is looking at how they can leverage system sensors to expedite the system functionality of notifying their people. Now, this might be notifying your IT people that there's an IT outage. It might be notifying your operations folks that you've got a machine down and there's a maintenance issue. The application of this is really limitless, but that's something that we're really focused on, is making sure that we have those integrations with those systems so that we can plug and play our platform into any sort of manufacturing facility and make sure you have the ability to notify those folks in real time, whether you're happen to be on site or happen to be on vacation with your family somewhere. That's really the key thing, is looking at that. So here's a quick visual. As I mentioned, you can have temperature sensors, you can have pressure sensors, you can have motion sensors attached to cameras, or just motion sensors in general. You have your access control systems. So this is really key, making sure that if someone breaks through your access control system, automatically send a notification, whether it be desktop, whether it be a full system activation, whatever the case may be, letting your people know that there's an intruder that's on the premises. Now, you don't necessarily know what the intent is at that point, but something's happened, someone's broken through your access control, and someone needs to respond. So that's really the critical piece, is making sure the right people have the right information in real time, so that response effort can be expedited as soon as possible. So this just kind of shows you a visualization of what that looks like. Another piece, that we've really found beneficial for a lot of our customers, our customers have found extremely beneficial. And this happens to be very subjective and poignant, given the tornadoes that happened yesterday and last night there in the Alabama area, where we have a significant amount of manufacturing customers. And so, when those tornadoes come down, the beautiful thing about this is you don't have to be in front of the computer sending out alerts, or you don't have to be on your phone sending out alerts. Because of our integration, we can expedite this process in real time. So as soon as NOAA sends out an alert of, hey, there's a tornado warning, there's a tornado watch, or whatever the case may be, we can have the system activate, send out the notification to your people, whether it be on their mobile device, whether it be over the visual hardware, whether it be on the audible hardware, whether it be over their desktops, whether it be leveraging some of the tones and things that we put in place for our customers in those unique circumstances. So that's really a key factor in this, because I know that when it comes to manufacturing, a lot of organizations are in specific geographies where a lot of these things can occur. We have a lot of organizations that are in Texas that are leveraging our system as well. And with the recent issues they've had with the weather that was very unexpected, the cold weather, the issues they were dealing with, some of this was really beneficial to those customers to be able to notify their people, not only about what's happening, but what's on the horizon, what's coming next, what's something they need to be aware of. Do they need to let their people go early? Do they need to keep their people home tomorrow, the next day? Whatever the case may be, just making sure the right information gets in the right people's hands. And that's the critical factor there. Now, when it comes to the activation of the system, as I mentioned, we want to automate as much as we possibly can so that this system is, seamless. And from the time we understand what's going on, or the time that these things get activated from these third-party systems, the notification's already out. But if we can't automate the process for whatever reason, then we want to make the manual process as simple as possible. We want to make it a one-touch activation. And there's many ways that we can do this. You can basically activate this thing, of course, on the user interface on the web. You can activate the system from your mobile device via the Activator app. You can even have, a desktop panic button where it's just an icon on your desktop. You press it, you have those scenarios already defined. You click which scenario it is. You already have the defined groups it's going to, whether it's grouped by geography, whether it's grouped by department, whatever the case may be. You have those scenarios already set up. And that's something that we help consult with you with, throughout the implementation process, is making sure that every sort of scenario that you've defined as a risk, we want to take into account when we are implementing the system, so that you have a one-stop shop. One of those things happens, you press one button, it goes through, everyone's notified in real time. So these things could be, a lot of organizations we work with, you can see by the picture here of the hazmat, they can have multiple just panic buttons that are hardwired to their facilities. They have on the walls, they can press, automatically goes out. And I mentioned some of the additional ways they can leverage it as well. You could even allow for your employees who are leveraging their VoIP phones to be able to activate the system, or at least notify you if something's going on via their VoIP phone, by having panic buttons embedded in the actual hardware phone itself. So something to keep in mind when you're thinking about how you are activating your communication systems today when emergencies happen, and maybe some ways that we can think to expedite that or simplify the process across the board. And that's really key, is not only just the comprehensive nature of your communication or critical communication response effort, but also thinking about how you can simplify the process and just really the all-encompassing ease of use of the system you have in place today. So I'll share with you just a few high-level best practices, that we've found with a lot of our chemical and food manufacturing clients. Of course, we want to have the visual and audio products paired just to make sure there's that redundant communication. If it's a loud environment, they can read it. If it is, an environment to where they can hear information coming over the loudspeaker or coming over the speakers, we want to allow them to be able to see that as well. And the more redundancy you have, the better. It's always best for people to have to read something twice than to not read it at all. And that's something that we've taken into account. Also, when you're thinking about different strobes, you might have different strobe lights meaning different things. Some examples here, red, yellow, green, all sorts of different colors when it comes to the strobe. So making sure that your people are trained and understand what the individual lights mean and how to respond to those things. As we mentioned, we have LED marquees, a lot of different tools, that we can kind of talk about. But the key thing here is, this is part of what we'll do during the on-site walkthrough and implementation process, is we'll help you, look at where those gaps exist, maybe how we can spread out the audio-visual products to give you 100% saturation of the emergency alert when these situations do occur, give you complete saturation of your facility. Just an example of maybe how we've implemented systems in the past. You can see this is a visual of a chemical manufacturing plant. As you can see, you have the office space, but you also have the actual floor where people are out there, thinking about alert beacons, where these things are going, the input, output, again, leveraging your access control, fire alarm, all these different systems you have in place. The key thing here is we don't want to necessarily oversaturate your facilities. We just want to make sure that regardless of where your people are in the facilities, they get this notification in real time and they know what to do next, so that they're not endangering themselves or endangering their cohorts. And then think about it from an enterprise-wide perspective. So one thing that is really great about our system is not only do we integrate your communication assets you have in place today, but we give you the ability to have that real-time monitoring of those systems. So at any given time, you can go into the platform and see all of your systems. Are they connected? Are they up and running? Do you have one that's down? What's the reason that it's down? It gives you all these visuals via the interface in real time. So it allows you to understand at any given time, 24 hours a day, if your system's up, if for whatever reason one of your systems does go down, we could automatically send out an alert to you, to your IT folks, whoever's involved in the process of maintaining those systems. We can make sure that the right information gets to the right people. So this is great for, you know, operational type circumstances. The Alertus system itself was built for, life safety and emergency alerts. But what we found is a lot of manufacturing facilities leverage us from an operational perspective as well. So as I mentioned, with the systems they have in place, with the machinery they have in place, if they have sensors attached to their machinery, they can see when a machine goes down, allowing them to get on it, fix it as soon as possible, really expedite the hindrance on the supply chain, on the actual manufacturing of the systems that they have in place today. So this also gives you an idea of how this could look from a geographical perspective. So you might have at headquarters all these different systems for your indoor alerting, your outdoor alerting, your personal alerting, but then in each one of your individual locations, you might have a different subset of different solutions in place, whether it's different types of PA systems, whether it's different types of fire alarm systems, whether it's different types of digital signage, whatever the case may be. You can see that all of this in real time as the administrator of the platform, as a day-to-day user of the system. You can see what this looks like across the enterprise and be able to respond to these things in real time, which is really key to where you don't feel like each individual location is on an island somewhere. It's all combined, it's all integrated, it's all one solution, regardless of the disbursement when it comes to geography. So that being said, I mean, basically what it comes right down to it, just to kind of summarize, we do three things really well. We want to integrate your systems. We want to make sure you have that single point of activation. You press that one button, whether it be from your mobile device, whether it's the automated piece where someone breaks through the access control. You've got a tornado that touches down. You've got a motion sensor that comes on after hours to let you know, hey, is somebody trolling around the warehouse? Do we have a potential theft type situation that we need to deal with, that we need to get police involved with? All of these things, giving you that single point of activation, whether it be manual, whether it be automated, really critical. And then, as I mentioned before, filling in the gaps. So any sort of gaps that may exist, we want to provide you with the tools to be able to give you 100% saturation in and around your environment, all of your facilities around the globe. Really critical there. So that being said, I think I'll finalize here. As I mentioned, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Those, on the East Coast, again, we're almost in the afternoon now. So good afternoon, or almost good afternoon. And for those international folks, thank you so much for joining, especially those who joined late at night. Are there any questions that, let's see, Jessica tells me there is a question. Jessica, can you just read me the question?
Yeah, let me go ahead and get to that for you. I'm not sure if you can hear me, Jay. But it is the VoIP integration done via API, or is it a CAP2 based?
Yeah, great question. So depending upon the type of system, we work specifically with Cisco and Avaya and a few others. It is an API integration, but there are other ways that we can integrate with those systems as well. So that, the key thing here is to have that kind of push-pull to where you can not only send out notifications to the VoIP phones, but also you can allow the VoIP phones to actually activate the system. So very simple methodology there when it comes to the implementation.